At the workshop before we actually went on the tour, I gave a little bit of an overview of the factories that we were visiting, and I actually said that one of the factories I was probably the most excited to visit was going to be Hytera EMS, because we're going to be able to see examples of Industry 4.0.
Seeing Vela so excited was great.
So for me and for many people on the tour, Hytera is perhaps one of the highlights of the factories. They're clearly a tier 1 factory.
They're quite big as a company, the $6 billion value company.
Which was easily the most technologically advanced of the factories we visited.
And it's probably one of the most advanced in the world.
Hytera is like going to Mars.
The level of sophistication of their process is very, very high. I mean, they're a super lean manufacturer. The level of automation that they have there is well in excess of anything else I've seen.
And we were given a presentation about their capabilities, which was just everything was just up a notch.
They're not a place that's be suitable for small run manufacturing. It's not their bread and butter.
The one thing I realized immediately, the whole building and the factories, it was huge.
It was just the sheer scale of it. It was huge, and it was quite a walk to get around it.
We walked through a very small section of their business park of Hytera. It's just the scale of this is impressive.
It was one of the most awesome experiences.
Hytera is kind of known as a tier 1 manufacturer, so they're kind of like on the same level as Foxcon, who's got the Apple contract.
And their marketing video at the start, you could see robots pulling trolleys around.
But you walked into this place and you knew it was something different. Like it was really swish. The entrance place had all this kind of modern art around. You walked into the boardroom and they had this beautiful presentation. So you can tell a lot from walking into a place what kind of vibe you're getting.
It was absolutely fantastic being able to have a tier 1 manufacturer be willing to open up and take a cohort of individuals who perhaps are not really a potential for them in terms of business, but to be able to share their knowledge and experience and really shape the way that we think about interacting with China and Chinese manufacturing was absolutely phenomenal.
I couldn't figure out what Gen 1, 2 and 3 was, but effectively it meant that there was a really high level of automation.
So their capability in terms of units per day, I don't know what it is, but it's huge.
So you could really see why they were a top tier manufacturer. You know, they had well and truly earned that, you know, that level.
The focus on quality there was incredible.
Some of the firms were very security conscious.
Hytera was the next level. Like, they asked you to put like stickers over your phone so you could take photos.
And I guess they're protecting their systems, but also protecting their clients. Even took the memory card out of Carl's camera, vetted all the photos. They're not leaving anything to chance that any of the IP will leave the factory. So I guess the security consciousness is actually really reassuring as a potential client, that you know that while they might show people around their facility, they're going to keep people away from your IP.
And so then we're taken across to the manufacturing building, back in our bunny suits again as always.
Basically, any of the factories that had electronics, we were wearing some level of ASD protection.
You know, you had to go through an airlock, which kind of like gave you a little air shower to, you know, pressurize the differences. And you got into this place and everything was just, the process was incredible.
When we stepped out of the airlock and into the Hytera production floor, it was a bit of an eye-opener. It wasn't anything like what we'd seen before.
And it became very apparent it was so that they could make sure they could keep the place spotless.
Look more like an operating theatre. All the walls are white, all the floors marked out and pristine.
Because they didn't want dust or debris or anything messing with, you know, the high quality products that were being made.
As each little group of people came out of the airlock, you could see them stop and look around and just be amazed at what they were seeing.
You could eat off the floor in this place. It's just bonkers.
It's squeaky clean. You don't even see a place that clean in Australia.
The level of quality and just the detail process was mind-boggling.
How automated it was also outstanding.
Many PCB assembly factories are what you would expect to see. There are a few machines, there are rows of people that are, you know, manually working on things. Hytera is really focusing on automation.
I guess that's what makes them different from everyone else.
So it's a very big room, lots of machines, but very few people.
It definitely felt space age where we were.
We saw walkie-talkies being manufactured. About half of the production line was robots, the other half people.
So what we saw is they have their own proprietary robots that they use.
And the first place they took us was to a room for incoming stock, where it's all temperature controlled, everything's barcoded and tracked, so they can figure out where it came from.
The product traceability was phenomenal.
They have a robot that actually to carry the products from the warehouse.
And then from there into the production room, and once again it was an SMT process, putting solder paste on boards.
From the moment we actually had to put on the clothes to enter the clean room facility, it every point in the process there was a quality inspection point to match it.
Their focus seems to be on automation as much as possible to achieve very consistent quality in production.
It's kind of artificial intelligence on steroids.
As we walked through the SMT line, we were able to see that as the board had the solder paste applied, there was a 3D scanning to check that the solder paste was applied correctly, but not only to the pads but also in the thickness required for each particular type of component.
It would use artificial intelligence to like pick out each individual solder and then analyze it so that it had like the exact covering of solder that it needed.
That's probably where things like machine learning come in, because machine learning's proved very adept at object detection and tracking and matching patterns. And so if you've basically got an assembly process where you need to adjust and test and find something's wrong, so you need to diagnose that, I think we'll see a lot more machine learning come into play there.
What that translates to is a very high yield of the final product. So when they actually test the final unit, the number of rejects that they will have will be very, very low.
Most places actually have a 2D process, so it was quite fascinating to see a 3D scanner.
Then pick and place machines, and man, they're fast. They're impressive to watch.
You had the same kind of pick and place machines, but they were so much more accurate, they were so much faster, they were a lot scarier.
Through that process, there was also the ability to stop the line if one of the components did not actually match the BOM. Very much sort of control and only let things proceed when correct.
We didn't want to move, but they literally have to actually push us to each station because we were just really surprised to see everything.
And then into wave soldering. But what this was a selective soldering machine, so it's actually pumping up a little molten jet of solder from underneath to actually individually solder components, so not just doing the whole lot.
As it went into the reflow oven and came out of the reflow oven, once again there was optical inspection. And in 3D.
But then we got taken to the next floor up where they were assembling complete two-way radios. Completely blew us all away because it was completely assembled by robots.
Hytera has their own brand of products, and so we were able to see the manufacturing of the walkie-talkie, which was what they informed us, a flexible automated line.
They had their production lines linked straight to the assembly lines.
The line was on a conveyor belt about this big. It was quite long.
And you could see them from the very, very beginning when they're just the electronic components all the way to the end, the finished parts.
And each individual step was a robot would take the piece off the line, do whatever it needed to do, which might be placing components.
And even the testing there was kind of in the same spot. You could see them dunking them underwater, making sure they worked.
And these weren't just following a specific recipe like CNC machines, like go to this position. They were able to deal with the orientation components and make adjustments, and if they found a problem, the robots would put it onto part of the assembly line that was going backwards to, I think, be repaired. Obviously the further down the line a piece gets, the more expensive it is to fix it up.
And then watching a million little pneumatic arms that'll pick up a part with a little vacuum head, take it off its tray, take it over here, rotate it 90 degrees, put it down in exactly the right place, and then the screws come out and it gets screwed together and a human never touches it.
For example, the case would be prepared and a robot would pick up the circuit board, put it in the case could be closed, screws would be applied, software would be loaded, stickers put in place, even things like testing radios by engaging with the volume knobs and turning them to ensure that the actual volume changes. All of this is automated and done by robots.
And then the last piece was sticking it in the box.
It was really just people making sure the machines were doing what they need to do rather than using manual labour for everything.
And it's perfect every time. That's just magic.
So yeah, really incredible just seeing that there's no break, it's just from the start to finish.
What I'd noticed in factories prior to this point is that two things. First of all, normally it's one line, one product, so you don't have mixing of products on one line, which kind of makes sense. But I'd also noticed that there's a lot of similarities in process between different products. You usually need a board, it needs a pick and place machine, you need to solder something, you need to add some other little bits and pieces on, you need to assemble it, and then you need to test it. Like, as a general rule of thumb, that's the kind of process that it went through.
I think they said the production line for the walkie-talkies they were making was 75% automated.
They said next time when you come and visit Hytera, there will be less stuff in the manufacturing side.
Perhaps one of the most impressive things about this line at Hytera is it not that the robots had fixed functions. You had to bring in a new product, you'd have to bring in, you have to retrain the robots.
The Hytera production line we went to produced many different variants of the same radio.
what Hytera kind of decided is there are a lot of similarities if there's a lot of similarities in two products and there's a lot of similarities in process, why don't we put them on the same line?
Each circuit board would come through at the beginning with the barcode on it, which would identify what type of product is to be built.
Cradle 1 for product 1, Cradle 2 for product 2.
As the product moved through each of the steps on the production line, the scanners would be able to work out which variant of the product and would reconfigure themselves on the fly on a board-by-board basis.
Okay, your Cradle 1 will give you this treatment. Oh, your Cradle 2 will give you that one.
One of the tricks you have is when you've got a big multi-axis robot arm that can move its head around and pick things up here, rather than have 6 different programs and an operator has to come over and say, all right, we're running program B now. They let the thing define itself. The parts that are getting manufactured sit on a little plastic tray that's dragged along the conveyor belt, and each tray is specific to that product and manufacturing step.
Hytera has patents on a lot of that technology.
Every board had a unique barcode on it, which could be scanned.
So the arm doesn't care which product it gets. It says, oh, I've got a Type B sled, I'm going to do the Type B manufacturing operation. You could take a Type B sled off and put a Type A sled on, and it would go, oh, that's a Type A sled, I've got to run this program. So rather than have every time we're going to reset the line to make a different product, you just leave it all there. So you just save yourself massive amounts of overhead trying to get everything set up again, because it's all there all the time.
And in fact, looking at it, it was really quite uncanny because the robots that they do have there moved in a very human-like manner. One of the robots would flip the carrier sideways so that the radio was sitting in the vertical plane. It would then place the PCB on it. It would then solder the PCB in place. And the way it did it, it looked like a person was doing it. If you didn't realise that the robot didn't have a head, you would have thought a person was doing it. And then it flipped it back down again for the next. So it was very, very sort of neat sequence of operations that made sense for that radio at that point in time. Different radio would have done a different thing.
So it wasn't like you had to build 100,000 of something, then change the line and build the next 100,000. They could literally just stuff a new board in and it would go through the whole production run and come out quite different to the ones either side of it if that's what the program was.
And so all of a sudden you had this line that could make, first of all, 2 products on the same line at the same time, but it could configure itself in the correct way to be able to organise it all.
I mistakenly thought that, once a production run's set up, it's pretty much for that part, and then if you need to change what the configuration is, you have to retool the assembly. But no, the robots could load the program related to the tray in question and do what it needs to do for that, and then the next tray could be a totally different part.
Everything was thought about, everything was kind of monitored, everything was tracked.
They want to be able to record what happens through the production process and then be able to track back what was the history of this particular board, when was it manufactured, where did the parts come from. So there's a great emphasis on the automation of the process and on data and record keeping.
It would list every component, every person who had touched the board along the way, every operator. For every component, it could trace back to the certificate of compliance and the incoming goods inspection reports.
And then it would log that to that chip. If you were the client and you're sitting in London, you could bring up on your smartphone, this chip had been soldered on this minute and it had this kind of profile and it was within the specification. It was just the amount of data they collected and logged was incredible, and the whole thing was automated.
The amount of information technology behind the full traceability on every board and the manufacturing statistics, large screens up on the production floor, giving everyone an understanding of how well the production line was working. This firm had really invested in their IT. The quality systems that had come out of that were really apparent.
With many parts of the assembly process, it's easy to solve just by using humans to do whatever needs to be done. One good example is just putting stickers on a product. It's very easy to have your products come down the conveyor belt and have an operator sitting there with a roll of stickers and put a sticker on each product. It takes very little training and you can be immediately solving that problem. But at Hytera, what they do is try to automate everything as much as they can.
Like you'd have like a little robot arm that would kind of felt like the claw from Toy Story. It would come down and would pick up this unit and would put it in its little cradle and things like that.
In terms of pure cost benefit, you need to do the sums as to whether it's worth it or not. You'll find that depending on the environment you're in, if labour's cheap, it's very difficult to justify automation. There's only one driving factor if it's not labour, and that's quality.
So Hytera is investing at every part of the production process to make it more and more efficient and higher quality.
So even a task that would normally be very easily solved with a human, they try to solve by automating the process or building a machine or a robot that will do the job.
We saw many robots, processes which I would previously have thought only a human could do, they very proudly had built systems where the robot could do it for them.
And it can be difficult to make a machine to do a job that can be very easily done by a human. But the difference is that once you have the machine that does it, you know that it's going to keep working indefinitely and it's going to give you the same result every single time. And because their obsession is really around quality and reproducibility, they want to know that when the sticker goes on the box, it's at the exact same angle every time. It's consistent, within a fraction of a millimeter on the same position. A human operator will do a good job and they'll be fairly consistent. But by investing in the processes and the machines and making a system that will do this automatically, you know that you're going to get the same result every single time forever.
One thing that's quite different is when Australians talk about automation, we apologise that people are leaving the system. In China, I was really amazed at how excited they were and unapologetic about removing people from the production system.
Having the new factories, the Gen 5 factories that they're working on, not even having lights because it's all just robots is pretty incredible. I would have hoped all automation for production lines would be in Shenzhen, but obviously the initial costs are quite immense. It pays off in time, but not all factories can do that kind of automation.
They're manufacturing stuff so fast. That one line we visited was making 80 radios an hour.
Multiplied over how many production lines, that's a lot of product to sell. So that's pretty impressive as well.
Which is phenomenal. You just make things so fast.
But they weren't stopping there. Hytera had this vision and you could feel it in the kind of pride and the people who were working there. They wanted to move to Gen 5.
Their ultimate objective is to have no people whatsoever in the factory. So it takes a lot of investment because you have to solve that problem.
And when we think about, there was a need, Hytera wanted to meet it, so they just went and did it. That's hugely innovative and creative, and they have quite a number of patents around this process.
It all comes down to volume. So for products that are very low volume will have a lot of hands on them. So HLH, where we saw the robot housings made, where they only needed 100 of these, it was a very manual process. Then at LifeX, where we saw in the tens of thousands for production runs, there were a lot of hands on that product. Switching gears to Hytera, where it's literally hundreds of thousands of radios being made in a production run, it's worth investing in the automation. So I think we'll never move away from that. Where low volume product has hands on it and high volume product, the hands will be building the robots that build our products.
Remember, our goal is to get to a factory where you can turn the lights off. If you're condensing things down, all of a sudden, you don't need as many people. And if you're making it more diverse, you could have multiple kind of lines running at the same time, and you don't need to change the line around as much. And if you don't need to change the line around as much, you don't need as many people to do that too. We think about this concept of Gen 5 manufacturing facilities, and they are pie in the sky. Hytera is just innovation by innovation, step by step, just moving towards this goal. But as they move towards this goal, their current operations has improved so much. Cool and scary to see.
For a company like Hytera, their money is made on production. The thing is that what they produce needs to come from somewhere. They need input, they need new ideas and new products.
Whilst the factories are often looking for large scale, because the profits and margins are wafer thin, there's still an interest in startups.
If a company like DJI turns out to be super successful, then Hytera wants to still be there making their boards for them years to come, not just see them disappear and take their success elsewhere.
If we're going to work with a startup again, how do we make sure this is a long-term relationship? And this is kind of talking back to what Cofounder was talking about earlier. When a manufacturer decides to do some work for a company, they're really taking on a lot of risk that there's going to be follow-on contracts for their suppliers.
And so I think the takeaway from that would be that you can never predict which startup may actually become the next DJI or the next large phone manufacturer or whatever. If you want to have a great outcome, you still need to be engaged with organisations at the very start. If you don't, it'll be too late for you.
So what they do is look for opportunities, ideas, people with ideas.
Companies like Hytera may be aware that if they're doing the one thing forever, there might be a limit to what you can do with that, because a disruptive technology can come along and just knock you sideways.
Startups are their own beast. They're not big business, but they're also not traditional small business.
When a random group of Australians turns up, it's easy for them to think, oh yeah, they're just a bunch of tourists and we shouldn't really spend time on them. But from their point of view, it's probably worthwhile giving us a look around the factory and explaining what they do. Any member of that group could come up with some idea and turns it into a startup, and then eventually they'll want to produce a large number of them.
Small things turn into big things.
In the case of LifeX, we've had personal experience of, say, something go from seemingly nothing to mass production on a global scale.
We're seeing this more and more. Companies that have the manufacturing capability are looking for the next high volume product, and they're seeing that the incubator, hardware, accelerator model gives them access to smart people who, people have got the ideas but don't know how to manufacture in high volume or how to bring to market. Hytera was one of the firms we saw very, very keen on being a player in that space.
And it was interesting during the presentation, Hytera was talking about a program they run for entrepreneurs and for startups, and it's basically a kind of accelerator program where they take maybe a portion of your company, but they'll do the manufacturing for you.
And they offer funding for startups to partner with manufacturing, and they can do 100,000 plus.
Which is really something special, because Hytera, they really only do big contracts.
I'm not surprised at all that Hytera are looking for startups, because a small startup to do even just a simple component like a battery pack, so for recharging your mobile phone, maybe there's only a market for 10 million, but that's 10 million things that you made and sold. You make a lot of money just manufacturing stuff. It's almost printing money.
So for them to be able to try and reach out to startups that maybe don't have a lot of capital, who don't have huge orders yet, is a really, really interesting process.
The most valuable thing, I think, in all of that is the idea. If you've got a product, if you've got an idea that has market potential, these guys want to hear from you.
So my overall impression of coming out from Hytera was that a large organisation, a tier 1 factory, is still willing to have a group of people from Melbourne come along and take time out of their busy schedule, give us a tour where we didn't feel like we were just some inconsequential bunch of people. We felt very welcomed, and they informed us as much as they were able to. So it was great.
It was actually really cool to see cutting edge manufacturing and what that meant.
The Hytera factories is kind of like the vision that I had of all factories in China. For one worker, there's 10 machines. Obviously, it's not all like that, but definitely in Hytera, it was space age technology.